I am here to tell you that there are millions of people who should not take Medicare at 65, and they will not have penalties, and maybe you are one of those people. The whole Medicare process is often referred to as the Medicare maze, and like with any maze, you need to make decisions. As you come to this first fork in the road, to the left we have no, do not take Medicare yet. Going straight would be you should consider taking Medicare, but you don't have to without any serious consequences. And to the right is yes, it is time to take Medicare so you can avoid some serious financial problems. So let's go over the major factors in this decision, and then I'll flat out tell you which path you should take, meaning left, straight, or right. Now, there are two ways that you can delay signing up for Medicare past 65 and avoid any penalties. At the very end of this, I'll outline exactly what those penalties are, but first, let's show you how to avoid them. The first is if you are actively working. Important words there. Actively working, and you are covered by a group health insurance plan through your work. You do not need to take Medicare at 65. You will not be penalized if you stay on your work plan and postpone signing up for Medicare Parts A and B for later. The second way that you can delay Medicare and avoid penalties is if your spouse is actively working and you are covered by your spouse's group health insurance plan through his or her work. If this is how you are covered, you do not have to take Medicare at 65. For either of these situations, once you retire or you lose your company coverage, you have a special election period where you can pick up Medicare Parts A and B, as well as a supplement and a drug plan with no penalty. Or you can get an Advantage plan at this time without penalties if that's the route that you wanted to go. Now, just because you do not have to do something doesn't mean you shouldn't still consider it, which I'll go over here soon in the who should take the straightforward path section. Now, here's where things get a little bit dicey. It's no secret that on average, the older we get, the more expensive and risky we become from an insurance perspective. So put yourself in the shoes of your employer for a second. If your employer can move employees who are eligible for Medicare off of the company plan and on to Medicare, the company's insurance rates will go down for all the other employees, and often quite dramatically. So the company is incentivized to move employees off of the company plan to save everyone money. Here's where you need to know your protections, and any business owners, HR professionals, or employee benefit brokers watching, you'll want to know this as well. Companies are not allowed to incentivize employees to move to Medicare. Companies cannot offer you a raise to make up for your Medicare premiums. Companies cannot force you to take Medicare. This is absolutely not allowed, yet it happens all the time, even though it shouldn't, with one very important exception that has to do with the size of your company. If your company has fewer than 20 employees, so 19 or less, we have a bit of a problem. When we're talking Medicare, there are large groups defined as 20 or more employees. And then there are small groups defined as fewer than 20 employees. For large groups, the company's group health insurance plan is considered the primary payer. This is important because it means if you have a medical bill, the company insurance plan will pay its portion first. This is a good thing. If you happen to have Medicare as well, Medicare is considered a secondary payer, meaning it pays after the group plan has paid its part. For small groups, the order of payers switches, and this can be a problem. Medicare becomes the primary payer and the company becomes the secondary payer. This means that if you are with a company of fewer than 20 employees and you choose to delay Medicare past 65, the insurance company offering your employee health coverage can see that you are Medicare eligible, they can see that you do not have Medicare yet, and if a bill comes in, they can see that Medicare did not pay first. And that insurance company is well within its rights to refuse to pay anything until Medicare pays first. Well, since you don't have Medicare, guess who the primary payer is? It's you. This leaves you essentially without any coverage and left to pay the full bill. We have seen this happen. Things can get pretty sticky. To make things even more complicated and confusing, the insurance company that offers your employer plan, if it is fewer than 20 employees, has the discretion to choose whether or not they will pay for things. There are insurance companies out there who, even though they could refuse to pay because you are not on Medicare, decide to still pay the bill for you. There are others that refuse. This is where you'll hear a little bit of a self-promotion here in the sense that I always recommend working with an agent that knows your area and different insurance companies in your area so you can avoid problems just like this. You could save money if the employer insurance company still honors payments and you don't need to go on Medicare. Or you could be at a huge risk if you decide not to take Medicare and rely on the company plan where they refuse to pay since you don't have Medicare. So the wrinkle in all of this is just for those of you who are employed with companies companies of fewer than 20 employees. Also, remember how we said that employers cannot incentivize or force you off of the group plan to Medicare? That changes with the employer groups of fewer than 20. They can encourage, incentivize, or even force you off of the group plan when you reach 65 years old for the reasons outlined with the primary and the secondary payer issues. Okay, I think that we're ready to fully come out and say when you should take the left path of do not take Medicare. If you are covered by a company plan of 20 or more employees, either because you work there or your spouse works there, and that plan has better coverage at a lower cost than what you would get on Medicare, do not take Medicare. You do not have to, and you will not be penalized. You will save money by not taking Medicare. But even in this situation, you may hear from a friend or an agent or the HR team that you should take Medicare Part A anyways because it is free. Maybe. Unless you have a health savings account. If you have an HSA, that comes into this decision as well because HSAs and Medicare do not play nice together. As soon as you take any part of Medicare, yes, even if it's just Part A, both you and your employer must stop all HSA contributions. If your company has a solid plan at a low cost and they are contributing dollars to your HSA, or even if they don't contribute money and you are taking advantage of the incredible benefits of an HSA, do not take Medicare yet, even Part A only, because doing so will eliminate your ability to make HSA contributions. Okay, now let's move into the straightforward path option of when you should consider Medicare, but you do not have to take it. And before I jump too far into that, 89% of everyone who watches our videos have not subscribed to the channel, which is totally okay. But if this video has already helped you in some form overcome the fear of postponing Medicare past 65, because now you know you're okay to do that, please hit the subscribe button. It helps more than you know. Okay, here are the 6 scenarios that I will cover where you should consider Medicare, but you don't have to take it. There are always exceptions to this, so if you fall outside of these areas, know that you are special and outside of the norm in a good way. The first is if you are working or your spouse is working and you are covered by their plan, but the insurance company plan isn't all that great. Maybe it costs a lot, maybe it doesn't have a great network, and it has high out-of-pocket costs. In our experience, it's about 50-50, where 50% of the people that we talk to have stronger benefits through their work plan and should stay on that, and the other 50% of people could actually see stronger coverage at a lower cost on Medicare. So this is a situation where you may still want to consider Medicare even if you're working and covered by a group plan. To dive even deeper there, here's a little secret for you. Many companies will cover 100% of the employee health insurance costs, or a very large percentage, and then they will cover much less of the spouse. So if you are a spouse and not working for the company, it may save you as a couple some money if the non-working spouse moves to Medicare while the working spouse stays on the group plan, getting a larger portion of the insurance costs subsidized by the company. This isn't always the case, but something that you could look at. The second scenario is related to this. If you are the one working, you qualify for Medicare and your company plan is close or maybe not as good as Medicare, but your spouse is younger and doesn't qualify for Medicare yet, you'll probably want to stay on your company plan, delay Medicare for you, and wait for your spouse to become Medicare eligible. You could go on Medicare, and then your spouse would need to find an individual plan through the ACA marketplace. So you just want to compare the costs and the coverage and see which of these options is more advantageous for you as a couple. The third scenario of when you should consider at least some part of Medicare is if you do not have an HSA to worry about through your work plan. If this is the case, take Medicare Part A only, since you can pick that up with no cost. Just avoid Part B for now so that you aren't paying for Medicare Part B and your company premiums. Now, the fourth scenario is if you work for a company with fewer than 20 employees, as we've covered, you have a decision to make, one that I would highly recommend that you work with an agent on. If you are certain that your employer insurance plan is with an insurance company that will take care of the bills, even if you are not on Medicare, you can stay on the plan. If you know the insurance company is not okay with that or you're uncertain, you'll want to move to Medicare. All right, the fifth scenario is if you have FEHB or VA benefits. This gets a little bit interesting. Technically, you do not have to sign up for Medicare as long as you are okay with FEHB and VA coverage. In the VA's case, as long as you know that you will use VA facilities for the rest of your life and you stick to that, you technically don't need Medicare. However, the VA itself recommends that you get Medicare for several reasons, including VA funding and your service level. The other reason to consider Medicare is in the event that you ever decide that you want services outside of the VA with civilian facilities or providers. If you do see that as a possibility, you'll want to grab Medicare. I have a video specifically on FEHB and what goes into that decision right up here, and it's linked in the description of this video. This also reminds me, friends with TRICARE, once you retire and have Medicare eligibility, you will need to get Medicare A and B. Same goes for those with postal benefits. Finally, the last example of when you should consider Medicare when you reach 65 is a gray area. It involves those of you living outside of the country. Living outside of the country does not protect you from needing to pay your Medicare premiums unless you're a volunteer in a foreign country with a church service mission as an example. We get questions around this all the time. If you know that you will never come back to the States, you don't need to get Medicare. If you do come back to the States and you want Medicare, you will see a penalty. Depending on the length of time that you are away, you could get Medicare Part B while you live abroad. You're just paying for something that you can't use in order to avoid penalties in your return. So that length of time is what's going to factor into this. Okay, I think that covers the straightforward path of considering Medicare, but you don't have to take it pretty well. I'm sure there will be people who will let us know what we missed, but the point here is there are several scenarios where you have options. You have the choice to do what is best for you, and you are not forced into Medicare. You do not have to take it, and you don't have to worry about penalties. Now let's talk about when you do need to worry about penalties. So we'll explore the right path in the maze where you need to take Medicare. Let me rephrase this. This is America. You do not need to do anything, but if you choose not to do something here, there can be significant financial implications. Okay, there are 4 scenarios here. The first is if you do not have health insurance when you turn 65. You will want to jump on Medicare when you turn 65 because if you do not, should you ever decide to get Medicare later, you could face penalties both for Part B and Part D. Again, I'll go over those penalties here at the end. The second is if you are on COBRA when you turn 65. COBRA is a continuation of your group benefits after you've left the company. Maybe that was a termination or a voluntary leave and you get COBRA. Either way, if you carry COBRA after 65 and you do not get Medicare, you could face Medicare penalties. The third is a retiree health plan. A lot of companies will offer a retiree plan from when you retire into the future. There are a lot of variations to these, but if there is a retiree plan that does not have you sign up for Medicare when you're eligible in order to keep it, well, if you ever decide to come off that retiree plan and onto Medicare, you would face penalties. Also, these are typically paying secondary to Medicare anyway, so you could face the same problem for those who work for companies with fewer than 20 employees, where the plan won't pay unless you get Medicare anyway. The last scenario is if you're on an individual or family plan through the ACA marketplace or Obamacare or whatever you want to call it. The reason is once you reach Medicare eligibility, you lose any subsidies that you would have on the individual marketplace, making these plans more expensive than your Medicare route. So if you're self-employed or any other reason that you are on one of these individual plans, reaching 65 will push you into Medicare. If you have a younger spouse, he or she will continue on an individual plan with you continuing on Medicare. Now, you may fall outside of these examples. If that's the case, please reach out with what you've got going on and we can tackle those. All right, let's wrap this up by going over what those big bad penalties are so you can understand the scary consequences that all of the mailers will warn you about. The first is the Part B penalty. Medicare Part B is your medical coverage. There is a monthly premium for Part B for those who take Medicare Part B. Right now, it is $170.70 per person per month. That number does go up for those who make more money, but for 95% of Americans, they are paying $174.70. If you do not sign up for Part B when you should, that means that the government is not collecting your monthly premium dollars when it should. This means that if you decide to get Part B later, skipping payments you should have made, the government is going to penalize you. The Part B penalty is 10% of the Part B premium for each year you decide not to get Medicare Part B when you should have. So if you delayed Medicare for 2 years without a valid excuse, you would see a 20% penalty on your Part B premiums. Instead of the $174.70 per month here in 2024, you would be paying $209.64 per month. This penalty lasts the rest of your life, and the penalty dollar amount increases as the base Part B premium increases over time as well. The percentage stays the same, but each year the base Part B premium increases a little, and the 20% is on the new higher number, not fixed to the number when you originally took Medicare. Okay, the second penalty involves Part D prescription drug coverage. This probably deserves its own video, but the gist is the Part D penalty is a 1% penalty for every month you do not have creditable drug coverage and you're eligible for Medicare. That 1% is based off the national base Part D premium amount. This year, it is $34.70. So if you were to delay Part D for 18 months, you would have an 18% penalty on the $34.70, which is $6.25. That $6.25 is added on to whatever your monthly Part D premium is. And this penalty also lasts the rest of your life. It also increases as the national base Part D premium amount goes up each year. Now, going back to your employer plan, there are company plans that do not offer creditable drug coverage. This means that you could be safe from the Part B penalty perspective, but you're not safe from the Part D penalty, even though you're still working and covered by your company plan. The way to ensure that you are good here is by speaking with your HR benefits manager and making sure that you have a creditable drug plan. I'd like to officially apologize for being so long-winded. Sometimes I go into more detail than I should, but I'd also like to officially congratulate you on making it this far. Here is my code word for those who follow this channel. It lets me know that you made it to the end so that I can take your comments a little bit more seriously. My 5-year-old daughter's favorite question to ask me is, Daddy, what is your favorite color? I always tell her I don't have a favorite color. I like them all. So I'll let her ask you.
Friends, what's your favorite color?
So if you leave a comment that has a color in it, I'll know that you at least made it this far. If you need help with your Medicare decisions, please work with an agent who is familiar with the concepts that you just learned, who's okay letting you know that you should postpone Medicare if you are in a better spot through work coverage, and who's licensed and familiar with the plans and the companies in your area. If you have that person in your life, please use them. If you do not have that person in your life, my email is in the description of this video. I have partners licensed and familiar with all 50 states. That does not mean that they are physically located in all 50 states, but we have dedicated our lives to knowing the ins and outs of the states surrounding us, and we can help. This is the next video that you should watch. I appreciate you, and I will see you over there.